budget request.
That is not what's put before the financial town meeting. We can sit here and say, let me finish. We can sit here and say it can be 9%, 10%, 50%.
1%.
That is not our duty to put that before them. It's once it gets to the financial town meeting that they make the determination whether or not it goes above the request that has been put before them by the budget committee, which is 4.5. We don't go before them with another budget. That's what you are suggesting, that another budget be put before them.
No.
And there is no other budget.
No, what I'm suggesting, and look it up later if you want, but look up the Rhode Island property cap disclosure law, the one in 45-3 or something. The way that you're certifying these things to put in the official notice. That's what I'm talking about. This isn't.
That's exactly what we did.
Right, except just I'm concerned that you have a separate document that's floating around and that may not give people proper notice. And I encourage you to look at
that is not floating
Well,
around.
I'll just leave it at that. I mean,
And it's not another document.
It's not another document, it's like an inter-office memorandum to the state. And to say this is going to be published is crazy. You know better than that,
The
Mr.
only
Coulter.
people, if I might add,
Now, you're not going to get away with that kind of
I
characterization.
think
This
there are
is a
two
reasonable
things. I
concern.
want to go back, and I think that this is a
Hang on.
concern for the future.
I need to say one thing about this floating around.
Another stroke.
Okay. Mr. Nelson has a copy of it. Mr. Nelson got that from the budget committee. He got it from the budget committee. The only people that have a copy of that second notice, the unsigned disclosure statement, is myself, the treasurer, and the budget committee. And of course,
That's right.
And
so
the state.
if that is floating around town, it either came from the budget committee or the treasurer.
That's not so. I pulled it off the website 2 hours ago.
Yeah, it's on the website.
But
Which one?
don't we want it to be, are you saying that it should be?
You don't want it.
Okay, it's the clerk that puts out the official notice, and Mr. Coulter, you should realize that the warning and all the notices and all the advertisement, they do not enter anything other than the resolutions and the approval of the docket. In nowhere other than the one advertisement that was put in the paper, which is the, I guess you've called it the April 6th budget committee comparison of the 2 years' expenses. That is the only notice that was publicized. The warning for the financial town meeting is what's going to give them their due notice. That has already been posted, and there is no mention of dollars and figures in those notices. to
That's my
people.
concern, and I'm just sharing that
There is
concern.
none on that. So as far as have we noticed the meeting properly, it doesn't matter what goes on wherever with me. I have proceeded to notice exactly what the statute and the charter informs me to do. And there's no way I have another or entered any other figures into anything. The docket is printed as I received it from the budget committee. That docket is printed. We should have it probably tomorrow. And that's the only figures I deal with going forward, and that is where the notice comes from.
And I will also find out who put that on the web.
I don't know if we're saying the same thing. I'm not worried that it's, and I'm worried that it should be. I hope that's a public document, and that, because I don't see how I'm not saying you're doing the wrong thing by putting the warrant and not putting the notice on. I'm thinking, when I look at the Rhode Island Municipal Property Tax Disclosure Law, it seems to suggest that we need to put the electors on notice of what type of exposure they might have. You can't put the form in that says it's 1% and then come to the FPM and vote 20%. I mean, that just fundamentally would be a concern, and I would just encourage you
But
to consider
they
that.
can, but that's just it, they can. Whatever the notice says, the proposed budget is, when they come to the financial town meeting, if they decide to increase any number, then they're increasing the amount, their exposure.
I'm not
But
certain of that, and maybe you could take a look at that. That's all I'm
Listen,
trying to
everybody who
suggest.
proposes a change in the recommended budget of the budget committee
You know,
should be given public notice.
every financial,
That doesn't
how many
make sense.
financial town meetings have you actually gone to? 3? 2. Well, I can tell you
Less
that
than
people here have probably been to the financial town meetings for 20 years. And the budget committee, sometimes their budget gets adopted, sometimes it doesn't. And people go and they look at the docket. And that is the notice that they have, and that's what they work with. And that has been probably true for 100 years. So to divert their attention and say, okay, look, hey, the school committee is proposing a greater amount. Budget committee is doing X. The town council would like to increase their budget to take care of things like the Economic Development Commission, the planning member, the league, the chamber that has just given us $80,000. People are going to know that. They look at their docket. That's how they react. And to cast it differently is a little misplaced.
Once again, you're trying to score political points. I'm bringing up a very simple, somebody raised this concern that there's these two pieces of paper. I'm just asking you to go talk to your lawyers and look at the disclosure law, because there's at least an argument to be made that only one of them is in the paper, and that's all I'm trying to say.
That's all, just one in the paper. That's all.
The other one was informational, and I understood it to be for informational purposes, so that we don't have somebody putting a number forward that we can't sustain in the levy. And if the state says, no, you're not entitled to increase this by 1.4 million, you could only increase this by 700,000, it's a number that the people at the financial town meeting should be aware of before they start voting on this proposed budget. And I think that, I know my feeling is, I just want you to know what it is that could be generated by this. Then you have the decision of how much of that you want to spend. It can be nothing. It can be all of it. But that's going to be decided at the financial town meeting. If you don't have the number, you get yourself in a lot of trouble when you're voting on things and not sure where you can go with it. And that's my major concern.
And if I can mention just one more thing, if anything, if the Department of Revenue hopefully will send us a letter. And that letter would explain. And that's probably the thing that would get distributed, if anything gets distributed. Not two sets of documents that, in your case, appear to be the same, because they're taken out of context. We would never issue a package of 4 documents. The people wouldn't understand. I mean, there's only one piece of paper.
I think we're actually in agreement.
I mean, I think we're taking this way too far.
That's the issue I want to follow up with. And then I promise I won't say.
Okay, and because we are really want to be back on your...
You're right. But my concern is going back to the last.
It's not on the agenda.
We are essentially circumventing the statute. And it was exacerbated by the fact that we used the forms, including the checklist for request to exceed property tax. Here's what we did. We provided all of the information for them to certify. But then we said, don't certify, we're just looking for information. Now stop and think of that. You know, I know, and everybody knows that if they come back with a number for informational purposes, they'd use the information on the checklist so that any number that they come back with before May 8th is in fact the number they would have certified. So all we've done is circumvent the statute. What we've said is it's just informational. But in fact, the number that they come back with for informational purposes will be the exact same number, right to the penny, that they could have certified.
Okay, and isn't that the kind of information you need to have when you get to the financial town meeting, so no one exceeds that?
Then we should have voted to certify.
I don't want to certify a number that hasn't been appropriated, because I think if you go to them and ask for it, you're not asking for that number, you're asking for what the...
Let me ask